Anavalabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Brajajanarandana Yashoda Nandana Brajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundavihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kundavihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janarandana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vishpada Pramsa Vijakachaya Shri Srimad, Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maha Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Chaya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Vishpada Pramsa Vijakachaya Shri Srimad, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maha Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Pramanande Hari Hari Bol. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 16, King Chitraketu meets the Supreme Lord, text number 45. Ata Bhagavan Vayam Aduna Svadhavaloka Parim Shtashya Mala Surarishina Yatkatitam Tavakena Katam Anyata Bhavati Ata Bhagavan Vayam Aduna Svadhavaloka Parimrishashayamala Surarishina Yat Katitam Avakena Katam Anyata Bhavati Atta Bhagavan Vayam Aduna Vadavaloka Parimrishashayamala Surarishina Yat Katitam Tavakena Kataman Yata Bhavati. Ata, therefore, Bhagavan, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vayam, we, Aduna, at the present moment, Vat Avaloka, by seeing you, Parim Parimrishta, wiped away, Achaya Mala, contaminated desires in the heart, Surarishena, by the great sage of the demigods, Narada, Yat, which, Atitam, spoken, Avakena, who is your devotee, Tam, how, Anyata, otherwise, Bhavati, can it be? Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Therefore, my dear Lord, simply seeing you has now wiped away all the contamination of sinful activities and their results of material attachment and lusty desires, which always filled my mind and the core of my heart. Whatever is predicted by the great sage Narada Muni cannot be otherwise. In other words, I have obtained your audience as a result of being trained by Narada Muni. Purport. This is the process of the perfect way. One must take lessons from authorities like Narada Vyasa, and Asita, and follow their principles. Then one will be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even with one's own eyes. One only needs training. Ata Shri Krishna Namadi Na Bhaved Graham Indriyai. With our blunt eyes and other senses, we cannot perceive the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if we engage our senses in the service of the Supreme Lord, in the service of the Lord, according to the instructions of the authorities, it will be possible to see him. As soon as one sees the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all these sinful reactions in the core of one's heart are certainly vanquished. Om Agina Termandasya Ginanjana Shlakaya Chakshulmitamiana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we are reading in this verse and purports about seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seeing Krishna. And this query, this kind of attitude, is very prevalent, especially nowadays. You know, there are several classes of people that ask, why can't I see God? Or say, if God, or if I saw God, then I would believe in him. Both of those who are grossly atheistic say this. That is, those who are themselves atheistic and propagate atheism or materialism in one form or another. And then also many of those who are just, one could say, naive or innocent. And they're just following who they think has the proper information. And the challenge that they give to theists is, well, if God just showed himself to me, then I would believe. But I can't see God, so I will not believe in him. Of course, they also can't see protons, electrons, bacteria, all of these things, but they're very happy to believe in those things. So I don't think the mm, gripe, the issue, is totally epistemological for such people. But in any case, the question should also be asked, why should God come and show himself to such people? You know, somebody like Richard Dawkins, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Christopher Hitchens, all of these big atheist and materialist sort of people who might say something like this. They don't come every time when they're called. I'm sure as famous personalities, they have so many invitations to come speak or be on a podcast or some other engagement like that, and they do not respond yes to everyone. They are particular about who they see, who they interact with. Richard Dawkins, for example, refuses to debate the Christian theologian William Lane Craig. He gave some reasons for it, but I think it's just that Dawkins knows that he is not a very good philosopher, so he doesn't want to talk to a philosopher. But in any case, he does not come every time he's called. And if that is true for the mundane scientists and speakers and thinkers, how much more is it true for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who, after all, is a person and has the ability to choose whether or not to appear to somebody or not. And of course, there are different things going on with this challenge of wanting to see the personality of Godhead. At its core, it's ultimately an excuse of uh, they want to be able to continue to disbelieve in God. So they come up with some idea that justifies their disbelief. As I was speaking on Friday when I gave class, the proof of God's existence is extremely obvious and extremely simple to grasp, whether one sees him or not. So people have to come up with some excuse if they are intent on disbelieving. And saying, well, I can't see him, so I don't believe him, is a very good sounding excuse. People will take you seriously if you say that. If the person themselves is not so philosophically minded, I'll say, oh, yeah, that's a good point. Now, why should I believe in something that I can't see? The other underlying uh, idea behind this is actually pride. Why should uh, if God is going to appear to anybody, he should appear to me because I'm so intelligent and well-read and this and that, that if anybody deserves an audience with God, then it is somebody such as me. Of course, the way to get an audience with God is to be more humble than a blade of grass and more tolerant than a tree. And there's no real material qualification for seeing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And uh, ultimately, we should understand, though, well, actually, another point on this is that if these materialists and atheists saw God, would they even know? If one of these uh, big so-called intellectuals who espouse atheism, if one day they were giving a talk at some university or some event or something like that, and a dark-skinned cowherd boy wearing a peacock feather in his tail and a flute on his hand walked up on stage, would they say, "Oh, now I've seen God," or would they say, "Stop disturbing my time. Everybody came here to see me. I am the center of attention here." Because they want to see God without having knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So ultimately, God is seen by hearing. Of course, we can also see God with our eyes as he has manifested in the deity form, in the Murti. But ultimately, the way to gain knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is by hearing. Actually, the main way that we gain knowledge overall is by the hearing process. In the analysis of epistemology, there are various ways that we can come to understand uh, knowledge. come to understand the world around us, the world beyond us, etc. Uh, they there are there are many that are listed according to different uh, scholars, but Jiva Goswami has said that they generally fall into three categories: Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. Pratyaksha is direct sense perception. It's everything that is directly perceived by the senses. Anuman is logical inference, so we take certain truths and then determine their logical consequences. And ultimately, there is Shabda Praman, that is hearing from proper authorities. And we understand, we're told, or it's pointed out, that the best way of knowing uh, is Shabda Praman. And actually, this is true not only for transcendental knowledge, but even for material knowledge, in that it is more or less impossible to gain all of the knowledge that is there or that is needed strictly through pratyaksha and anuman. The claim that uh, materialistic science makes is that all of their knowledge is based on these two pramans, on these two forms of evidence. That is empirical investigation and then logical inference from the results of those empirical investigations with some axiomatic principles. However, if you look at the way that it is actually done, both educational and the educational side and on the professional side, it is based primarily on Shabda Praman. Going through school, we have all studied science to various degrees, to one degree or another. We have studied scientific facts and theories and things like that. But it is not always that we have investigated ourselves the mm, evidences, the results that led to such theories and ideas. Most of the time, we were told by a teacher that this is the case, and then we proceeded based on that uh, assumption or based on that foundation. Even in uh, graduate level or advanced level courses, for example, when I studied physics, it is not that I went through every single experiment myself and did all of them that led to the formation or the development of quantum mechanics. I was just that I trusted my professors that when they told me, the principles of quantum mechanics, that this was substantiated by experiments. Even if one had the knowledge to go through every experiment in the history of science, one would not have the time or the resources to do so. Especially nowadays, experiments can be quite expensive. For example, Jefferson Lab, which is a particle accelerator in Virginia, the annual budget is $70 million, paid for by the taxpayers. Uh, so even if one were able to grasp, where had the time to study all of the theories and grasp what to do, and then be trained on how to perform the experiments, actually performing all these experiments would be very difficult, not just in terms of uh, material resources, but also of time. So one must rely, even in science, on Shabda Praman. And even on the professional side, it relies totally on Shabda Praman as well. In that, when a scientist performs some experiment and gets some results, that is communicated to the scientific community. Generally, these days, this is in the form of a journal article. So generally, let's say I perform some experiment or calculation in particle physics or nuclear physics, let's say. And then I write up my results and send it to a journal, let's say Physics Review D. And then it goes through the peer review process and it is there and published. And then other scientists can read it and say, this Klaus Verhoep has given a nice results that we will build upon and use. So in the professional level as well, this materialistic science also relies on Shabda Praman and trusting the uh, other scientists that they did the right thing. And this system, any sort of Shabda Praman, rests ultimately upon how much you can trust the source from which you are hearing. In the realm of mundane science, of materialistic science, the process that is supposed to ensure uh, this that things are verified, that things are actually true, is the process of peer review. Or for those unfamiliar, after a uh, article is submitted to a journal, the editor looks over it to make sure that it passes the sniff test, more or less, and then it's sent off to some other scholars who are experts in the field who are supposed to read it and come back and see if there are any problems and uh, suggest to the editor basically what to do with the paper, whether to publish it or not, or to send it back for revisions, or this and that. And this is generally held to be the gold standard of scientific evidence to make sure that we're not fooling ourselves or fooling other people. Many times, if you're in an argument with somebody and you bring up some form of evidence, they might rejoin, well, that evidence is not peer reviewed. So it's supposed to be a very good process, supposedly, for making sure that what we believe to be true is, in fact, true. However, if one looks into it more deeply, one finds that there are many problems. Uh, where I don't have time to go into every single problem in the peer review system. I am writing an essay about it, but I'll just talk about some major ones, which is that peer review usually doesn't actually happen. uh, in the sense that uh, those who are supposed to be reviewing don't actually always give a thorough review of the article. And it's easy to see why, and that academics are generally extremely overworked already, especially if they're anywhere near early career. Uh, and so when they perform all of the duties that they're actually getting paid and credit for, if they get an email to review a journal article, which is unpaid labor, and if it is actually a breakthrough, uh, the peer reviewers get none of the glory for it. They might, that many times they do only do it in a perfunctory sort of way. They might just skim it and then just push it along. And so you have lots of uh, bad research getting through, which is one of the reasons why that many uh, studies today across all fields of science, not just the social sciences, but increasingly also in the hard sciences, uh, are unable to be replicated. So the idea behind scientific process, this cross-checking process, is that other scholars, other researchers are supposed to be able to replicate your results. That if you have the, if you set up the experiment in the same way that that the original researchers did, then one should get the same results. But increasingly, as people try to do this, it does not happen. That they are redoing the experiments but cannot get the same results. And there are various other ways as well. And it's become quite a widespread and rather a fundamental problem in the whole system of scientific publishing. There's recently this case where Sage, which is a journal company, uh, so they own a bunch of these scientific journals. Recently, they acquired the Journal of Intelligent and Fuzzy Systems, something like that, and they had it audited to see if it was, legit or not. And they had it audited by an external body that does these sorts of things, called the Committee on Publishing Ethics or something like that. And uh, this organization said that they uh, need to take a closer look, which they did. So they did an investigation that started last August and just finished a few weeks ago. And they found that they ended up, well, they found that there was widespread cheating in various ways, sometimes due to the author, but mostly due to the fact that no actual review was done, or there was uh, citation coercion or citation cartels or other things like this. Uh, and they ended up retracting over 1,500 papers from this journal. Uh, of course, what happens when a retract, or what doesn't happen when a retraction occurs, is that uh, or what doesn't happen is that people don't go and look at all of the articles which cited those scientific articles to see if they still hold up, to see if their conclusions that are based on these bogus articles actually are still valid. And there's actually been cases where journal articles have been cited more after they were retracted than before. So, and there's more and more depth that one can go into these sorts of things. But ultimately, it depends on who do we put our trust in when it comes to Shabda Praman. Prabhupada made this point when talking about the moon landing. He said to his disciples and others who were wondering about the moon landing that you believe that they went to the moon because it's written in a 10 cents newspaper. But, it's written in Srimad Bhagavatam that the men can't go to the moon. That's the words of the spiritual master and the acharyas. So why should you believe a 10 cents newspaper over Srimad Bhagavatam? So it is ultimately about who we trust. And as Prabhupada says in this purport, we must take lessons from authorities like Narada, Vyasa, and Asita. One can extend that to the um, all of the bona fide acharyas in our line, in the line of Vaishnav Siddhanta. And in this way, one can actually obtain the eyes to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that one can actually become Krishna conscious, that it takes training. It is not that anybody can act in any way that they like and make spiritual advancement. It is only by following the proper process that one can actually come to the actual standard of devotional service. Because sometimes devotees get into all of these different things, personality development, psychology, this or that. And it's not that those things can't be used in devotional service, but that they must remain subordinate to the actual principles enunciated by the acharyas, and Srila Prabhupada. Because ultimately, it is a scientific process. It's not a sentimental process that I feel like this is making me more spiritual, so I will do that. Or that everybody has their own way, and no matter what you do, you get to the result in the end. No, it's just like when I went into the science lab, when I taught lab, uh, when I was in school. You have a resistor, for example, and you put a voltage across it, and it follows Ohm's law. No matter how we might think or feel about it, the fact is simply there that this is the way to get the result. If you want to figure out the voltage across the resistor, then you must take the resistance and the current and multiply them. And that is simply the way it is. And likewise, if you want to make spiritual advancement, we must follow the words of the acharyas and the words of Srila Prabhupada without adulteration or change. And this is actually training for uh, serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for coming to the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. And actually, by this process, we can come to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead in this very lifetime. either by having him manifest in his, one could say, original form, or by understanding that when we see the deity form, that is his original form also. Actually, the various ways that we serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead here is training for the spiritual world. The activities, the way that the activities are done in the spiritual world might be a little different, but all of the various activities themselves still go on there. You know, people are dressing Krishna, are cooking for Krishna, are cleaning for Krishna, etc. So we should take this training very seriously and follow the process of devotional service as given by proper authorities who deserve to be listened to, who actually can give true Shabda Praman. And then eventually we will have our senses purified enough that we will be able to recognize Krishna and the Supreme Personality of Godhead and be able to serve him in a way that is unmitigated, unalloyed, and unceasing. So I will end here. Hopefully, there are some comments, questions, additions, subtractions, complaints.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So I have a few different comments as questions. First, on your last point, is there an echo?
It's a little bit of an echo, yeah.
One second. Is there still an echo?
A little bit, but I think I can understand it well enough.
Okay, so one, I appreciated the class on deconstructing the atheistic views about seeing God,
Mhm.
and also just appreciated this last point about in the spiritual world, we're going to be doing what we're doing now, cooking and dressing Krishna.
Mhm.
Um, Usually I think about how we're going to be having loving exchanges, so we need to practice that, but we're also practicing other like activities that we'll be doing with Krishna. Um, you already answered one of my questions, which was what did Srila Prabhupada mean whenever he said you can see Krishna? Because then right after that he says you can't see him with his blunt with your blunt eyes. But he says you can see him, so I was just wondering like what way he was referring to. But I think we're talking about through, like you said, seeing him through hearing or through he might appear in his what you called his original form, or seeing his Archa Vigraha deity form as like his form.
Yeah, I
And I
mean,
was wondering
I said original form. It's in like, you know, we expect Krishna to just like
how
appear in front of us. But of course, we should understand that the Arjavigraha is also the original form that's non-different than Krishna.
exactly that's what I understood from what you said. And then I was wondering a few different things. You can see, can you said how we can't see like protons and things like that. Can you see those with a microscope?
Photons, no. I mean, photons, strictly speaking, are how you see, and that photons are particles of light. Uh, some things that I mentioned, like, you know, bacteria, like germs, things like that, cells, you can see under microscope. Certain things, like electrons and such, you can't directly see. You can't, even with a microscope, because they're smaller than the wavelength of visible light. So, you know, even with a microscope, they are inaccessible to pratyaksha.
Okay, I had some other comments, but first I wanted to go into that. Then how do they know that they're there then if we never?
So, they claim that, you know, these electrons and other things are there are because of the results that they give. That, you know, if one, so they make the theory, uh, and then they perform experiments. And they say, okay, if uh, our theory is right, this result should happen, and if our theory is wrong, this result should happen. And then they perform the experiments, and the experiments are consistent with, the electron model, or nowadays the electron field and things like that. Uh, but of course, this is one of the issues with the ascending process of trying to figure out everything yourself, is that there's an infinite amount of theories that you could make to explain any one observation. So yeah, that's the thing, is that they say that they're there because the theory um, agrees with experimental observations. But of course, one could make other theories that also agree with experimental observations.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciated one of the points that, Krishna, even the scientists, they don't come when they're called to every like speaking event. And similarly, Krishna, even more so, he doesn't have to come just because you call him. Um, oh, actually, and one point on that is someone was speaking in this Japa talk, and they were saying how like there's like you're calling Krishna, and you're like, hey you, and then you like turn away, and then you're like, hey you, and then you turn away, hey you. So it's like anyway, so you're supposedly calling him, but uh um when we're talking about like we're hearing from sources of pratyaksha and anuman and shabda, if someone said to you, well, technically I'm using it's really a pretty weak argument, but like I'm using we're ultimately depending on pratyaksha and anuman because the sources that I'm going to already did it through pratyaksha and anuman, and I'm just accepting what they said. But of course, then you're also just trusting them and supposing that they actually did it.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain level, like yes, the authorities also understand by direct perception. So, I can't remember the Sanskrit, but first couple of verses of chapter 9 of the Gita, uh, talks about that this knowledge is the perfection of religion because it is uh, able to give perception of the self by direct realization, or direct perception of the self by realization, something like that. If you look in the Sanskrit, the uh, words, one of the terms that's used there, or the term that's used there, is derived from pratyaksha. So it's direct perception. So we do understand that one who has seen the way, that one who is the spiritual master, who has actually reached Krishna consciousness, does have direct perception of it. Uh, but those of us who don't yet have direct perception must depend on Shabda Praman, on hearing from those who do. So in one sense, yeah, Shabda is all about somebody else's pratyaksha. Uh, and it's up to determining whose pratyaksha you actually uh, listen to. Of course, in the spiritual science and Krishna consciousness, there's actually an opportunity for pratyaksha for everybody, because everybody can do the experiment of engaging in bhakti yoga, while not everybody can do the various experiments of physics, chemistry, biology, sociology, psychology, all these things.
Excellent points. Last thing, the peer review process. Um,
Mhm.
that's whenever someone reads the paper and checks it out. Um, it's kind of I was thinking about how like if you haven't really done the experiment, like you would think a peer review would be more like, okay, everyone who's looking at it, do the experiment and see if that works. That would be like a
That would be like replication.
yeah. Sorry.
That would be more like the replication side of it,
Mm,
which Uh, Usually, even when they, or a lot of times, even when they try, they can't actually replicate it. It's called the replication crisis, and it's a giant problem in science right now. If anybody wants to look into it more.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Krishna. Any other comments, questions?
I have comments,
Yes, Tarka Prabhu.
more than we have time for, but
Mhm.
I thank you for your class. Very
Thank you.
thought-provoking and interesting. And it underscores the fact that we are in an ever-advancing stage of Kali Yuga,
Mhm.
one in which the last leg of Dharma is getting the stuffing beat out of it.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, we can't, seems we can't trust any source of information anymore. Everywhere you turn, there's problems with accuracy of information. You can't trust the media. The
Mhm.
media is agenda driven and they'll lie about anything. Back in um, I don't know, September or so of last year, the media was, I remember for several weeks, they were going on about how President Biden was sharp as a tack,
Mhm.
in insisting that, he's at his absolute best. He was never doing better than he is right now. Uh, and of course, that was not the case. Um, so the media can't be trusted. Um, we can't seem to trust science anymore. And academia, also agenda driven and um, um, influenced by financial considerations, and now we're learning about even political influences, sometimes foreign nations
Mhm.
paying academics to do this or that, to somehow undermine a particular country. It's a real problem. Truth is becoming very evasive. For those who are discovering artificial intelligence, some
Yeah.
devotees have taken an interest in some of the facilities that are available online. There's a number of them. Um, One of the
Mhm.
more popular ones is ChatGPT, which has some pretty serious problems.
Yeah.
The promise is very great, but the actual results are beyond dubious. If you ask ChatGPT what are your frailties, what are the hallucinations that you are subject to, what are some of the inaccuracies that you are subject to, it will give you a lengthy list of things that are mind blowing. I
Mm.
did some experiments. I asked for some particular references to Shastra, and simple things, Bhagavad Gita, this and that, and it completely fabricated stuff.
Yeah.
100% of everything that it ever referenced was wrong. It made up verses. It didn't exist. All the references were completely wrong. And consistently, I worked with it for a while to see, what is the potential here? Because the
Mhm.
promise is spectacular. What a facility it would be
Yeah.
if it worked right. But it actually was it, not just a little inaccurate, but I mean, way, way off the mark, seriously inaccurate, 100% of the time, completely untrustworthy, and so therefore useless for purposes of Vaishnav research.
Mhm.
Um, so in every sphere, everywhere you turn, there is this problem. Hey, I was looking at Tattva Sandarbha, where
Mm.
Jiva Goswami discusses, the different types of understanding truths, proofs, um, he boils things down to, three primary sources of Shabda and Pratyaksh and Anuman. And there's a number of commentaries, and one of the things that is discussed is that while Shabda is vastly superior to um, Pratyaksh and Anuman, they can be acceptable under certain circumstances, and the fundamental criteria is that they must support Shabda. When they are in agreement with Shabda and lend support to Shabda, then Pratyaksh and Anuman can be acceptable. But conversely, of course, if they don't, then they have to be just thrown out. But this for me, it brought to mind criticisms that I have heard of criticisms of Srila Prabhupada's some of his statements, which people will criticize that, Srila Prabhupada said this or that, and we know it's not true. Srila Prabhupada said that women's brains are 32 ounces, whereas a man's brain is 64 ounces. And this is a case in which Srila Prabhupada was relying upon information which he had gotten from a college professor. One of his professors had instructed in this way, and because it seemed to support the version of Shabda, Srila Prabhupada utilized it to support the statements of Shastra. So it's not an instance in which Srila Prabhupada was somehow imperfect. He was perfect in that he was following the authorized system, but the obvious frailty of accepting production out of mind is that it's sometimes it does not work. It's it's faulty. It may be right, it may be wrong, and it's often wrong. So he followed the principle of accepting this particular source because it seemed to support what Shastra was saying, but unfortunately, it turned out to be wrong. So the point is, the fault does not lie with Srila Prabhupada. It's a defense of Srila Prabhupada. Anyway, those are some of the thoughts that have occurred to me, and I'm delighted you're writing something about the problems in academia. Something that needs to be discussed a lot more. It's a really, really serious problem.
Yeah.
But these things are to be expected. In Kali Yuga, gradually truthfulness is going to disappear. And what can be done? It's we see every day how truthfulness is rapidly disappearing. Yeah, I remember hearing a talk given by, I think it was some executive from NPR, suggesting that sometimes the truth, the facts get in the way of the agenda-driven story.
Right.
Jai Shri Shri Radha
Radha
Damodar.
Damodar.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your comments. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
All right. Prabhu, did you see my question that was in the chat?
Oh, I did not. Let me step into the Tulsi room real quick.
And I was reading, I just happened to run across a headline that said that it was shocking how a lot of the science, experiments are, and the articles that appear in a lot of these journals are false, like 30%.
Yeah.
I was really sad.
So splitting the atom, figure into the results of unseen protons, etc.
That's part of Jana's question, in like terms of, can you see the protons or the neutrons or?
Yeah, so it's the whole idea of splitting the atom, releasing so much energy, is consistent with these models. Uh, so yeah, like it's possible and explained by the model. But once again, we can, somebody's good at math, for example, just good at mental speculation. We can make so many models for any set of experimental facts. Uh, Not that I necessarily disbelieve in protons and electrons, just uh, pointing out that if you're rejecting God because you can't see him, you should also reject protons and electrons because you can't see them. And nobody does that.
Exactly. Exactly. No, that question just came to mind in terms of, what Johnny was saying, can you see protons? And your response was no. But then the result of the proof that those things are there, I would imagine, would be the splitting of the atom
Yeah,
and
splitting of
how
the
they,
atom and other things like, yeah, like one can go through the history of science and see like all
not
the experiments that were done.
right, not my forte at all. But you always give such enlightening classes, Prabhu, and you actually break things down that otherwise it'd be very, very complicated for the common person. So thank you.
Hi, thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Jai Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Shri Radhe. Jai Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Shri Radhe. Jai Lala Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Shri Radhe. Jaya Lalita Vishaka Lalita Vishaka Shri Radhe. Jaya Nisai Gora Sundar Nisai Gora Sundar Gora Hari. Jaya Nisai Gora Sundar Nisai Gora Sundar Gora Hari. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Charana Padma Charana Krishna Bhakti Glory Japa. Krishna Bhakti Glory Japa. Karma Vakya Ite Te Gloria Guru Kapadam Atya Anatoli Homane Amata Anatoli Homane Amata
Shri Guru Sarane Rake Kama Chakri. Jai Prasade Sri Yada Amsara. Jai Prasade Sri Yada Amsara. Sachidan Namo Vishnu Padana Krishna Prasthana Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padana Krishna Prasthana
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Go Vrinda Jaya Prabhu Nityananda Gadadhar Shri Vasari Go Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Vrinda Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Rama,
Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare John, character, divine grace, this is John, the love life only. John, Father, Charya, I don't have a picture on. Practice says on English, Jai. Namakaya Shara Saporti Jai. Premse Devotion Nanda. Shri Hare Nara Kamasari Loba Kanti Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Tamakana Guru Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vadavam Ki Jai. Mai Pardam Ki Jai. Gangamaya Ki Jai. Yamunamaya Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Anatha Vaishnava Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. So make Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai, Nitai Gopanande, all glory to the soul devotees, Hare Krishna. All glory to the soul devotees, Hare Krishna. All glory to the soul devotees, Hare Krishna. All glory to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all Sri Bhagavad. Knowledge without says purified by the recommendation of medicine. Attachment to the lotus feet, the perfection of all desires. Give with my doctor knowledge and social character. He is my Lord. I'm excited for him to do it. the greater circumstances that our spiritual life of the mercy of God with all more mercy and mercy. Oh, man, we do it all. Demonstrated in mercy. Again, our Lord. By grace, we love our Father, and speak.